What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Been a few weeks since I've been able to make the Underdog video, but should be able to make it every week through the Super Bowl starting now. We'll start things off with a pick from what should be a great game between the Colts and the Jaguars. This game has a ton of playoff implications. Both teams have honestly exceeded expectations to start the year at 8-4. So the winner is set up really nicely to potentially win the AFC South. For this one, I like Jakobi Meyers, higher than 51.5 receiving yards, Alec Pierce, higher than 55.5 receiving yards, and then Trevor Lawrence, higher than 220.5 passing yards. The Colts do have a very strong defense, but they are susceptible to wide receivers out of the slot. They've allowed the fourth most schedule-adjusted fantasy points to slot wide receivers, and are still a positive matchup for both outside wide receiver spots. Since joining the team, Meyers has been the best wide receiver on the team, honestly. He's led them in yards per route run, target share, first read percentage. Like, he's been their top wide receiver, which is crazy because wide receivers changing teams have such a brutal track record over time. Like, so often we get excited about these wide receivers that change teams near the trade deadline, and then it takes them like the entire rest of the season to ramp up in any way. But Meyers didn't miss a beat. He was already up to 92% snap share this last week. He's averaging 61 receiving yards per game since joining the team, and it's been increasing since he started. He's just been really, really good, really consistent, been a security blanket for Trevor Lawrence, so I think he's a great pick. And then for Alec Pierce, the Jaguars also have a very good defense on the other side, but they're very, very, very good against slot wide receivers, league average against wide receivers lining up on the right side of the field, and the third best matchup for wide receivers lining up on the left. Alec Pierce almost never plays from the slot. Maybe he'll run a couple of routes from the slot, but he will be an outside wide receiver all day, and he does run by far the most routes on the team from the left side of the field. He's also just like been their best wide receiver recently. Like, I still think Downs is great. I still think Pittman is great. But recently, Alec Pierce has been the best wide receiver on this team. And so when you combine that with having the best matchup on the team and someone who, even if the volume is maybe lower than we expect, he can hit for a big play. Like, he's their big play guy. If you guess wrong on the volume for Pittman, the volume for Downs, they're just not going to get there because they don't have that high-end big play potential. Well, Alec Pierce does. And so even if he only catches 2 balls, he could still go higher than 55.5 receiving yards. And then I like adding in Trevor Lawrence just because it is a better passing matchup for Jacksonville than it is rushing. Teams also historically just throw the ball at a little bit higher rate at home. It's just easier to do so. I'm also hoping that Brian Thomas Jr. is just a little healthier than he was really recently, but definitely last weekend, week before that. They've kind of talked about how they want him to get healthy, and then they're going to start scheming him more usage. I think he's getting healthier. They talked about him getting healthier. And so if he's healthier, you have Strange back, the good matchup for Meyers. Everything is pointing to a pretty good day from Trevor Lawrence, and 220.5 passing yards isn't anything crazy. So if we're taking higher on the passing for Pierce, the higher for, or receiving for Pierce, obviously, higher than the receiving for Jakobi Meyers, it makes sense that we're not looking for a slow-paced, run-heavy game. We want kind of, aerial attacks on both sides here. And so also if, Pierce is hitting, if Meyers is hitting, it's just more likely Trevor Lawrence hits on the other side. And the correlation for both sides is really nice. Another combo I like is the duo of Darren Waller and Mason Taylor. I like Darren Waller higher than 28.5 receiving yards. That feels like by far the worst projection on the week by Underdog. And then Mason Taylor higher than 27.5 receiving yards. I don't understand the Waller projection. It should probably close at 38.5. And for something to be 10 receiving yards off at that low of a projection is wild. It should not in any way be 28.5 receiving yards, but it has been. Returns last week, and he already runs a route on 69% dropbacks, which I thought was high. I thought it was going to be 40, 45%, but to throw him out there at 69% dropbacks was crazy. They also said on those dropbacks, there wasn't a lot of schemed usage. There was going to be a lot of plays where he was running a route, but they weren't designing him a look because they didn't want to overload him in the first game back. very easy to suffer a setback, be done for the rest of the year. They want him rest of the season. They are theoretically in the playoff hunt. They're not eliminated just yet. So he exits that game fully healthy. They've said not only are the routes run as a percentage of dropbacks going to increase, the usage on those routes run is also going to increase this season. Nothing in the matchup indicates anything. It's a league average matchup against the Jets. But when you increase the routes run, you increase the schemed usage, you get a big player like him. He's like the number 2 target on this team, or I guess number 3 if you include Devon Achane. Number 1 pass catcher for tight end by a mile. Like 28.5 just makes no sense. It should be way higher than that. And then Mason Taylor playing a lot. The production hasn't been amazing recently, but he's also had a little bit of just like luck not going his way, and then some tough matchups. He's playing over 80% snaps. You love to see that. He's a rookie. They want to keep him usage rest of the season. That's all great. But he's only caught over the last 4 weeks 67% of his targets. In 3 of those games, he's caught 60% or less. But again, the matchups have been tough. In the 3 games in the last 4 where he's had really bad, I don't want to say really bad, but like pretty bad days for what you'd expect from him, it's been in poor matchups for tight ends. In the 1 good game in the last month, it's come in his solo positive matchup for tight ends. This week, it's a great spot. 3rd best schedule adjusted matchup for tight ends. They represent a 4 fantasy point boost to tight ends. The only other time this season that Mason Taylor had this good of a matchup for his position, he commanded the 2nd most targets on the season for him, and he scored his only receiving touchdown. So 28 receiving yards for him feels very attainable. I know they bring in the 2 wide receivers. They got Mechie now. They've got Adonai Mitchell, and that's kind of taking some target share away. I don't think it matters in this spot. It's a great spot for tight ends. He's going to be on the field a lot. I don't think he's only going to catch 50 or 60% of his targets. He's going to be more efficient than that, and he doesn't have to be that amazing to go higher than 27.5. So love the combo here, but again, I do think Darren Waller is the most incorrect line of the week. I also like the duo of Pat Bryant and Jack Bech. Pat Bryant higher than 29.5 receiving yards. Jack Bech higher than 21.5 receiving yards. Neither did a whole lot to start the season. I mean, Bech wasn't even playing to start the year, but both have seen their playing time increase as of late. Pat Bryant coming off his highest snap share of the season. Not just snaps. You can't be like, oh, well, it was an overtime game, right? Snap share, percentage of snaps, 70%. That was his highest this season. And you'll love seeing that coming off of bye. There was a clear effort post-bye to get him on the field more, get him some usage. We see that very commonly for rookie wide receivers, but it's great to see that they want to get him on the field. Also, it wasn't just like he's running empty routes, right? That was his 3rd consecutive game higher than 40 receiving yards over that time, over the last 3 games. He leads the wide receiver room in yards per route run and first read percentage. In fact, Pat Bryant had as many first read targets last week coming off of the bye as Courtland Sutton and Troy Franklin combined. That's crazy. Now, I don't think he's the one on this team. Courtland Sutton is the number 1 wide receiver on the Denver Broncos, and that will continue rest of the season and hopefully for them into the playoffs. But it's pretty nice to see coming off of the bye in a game that went to overtime, a very close game, having him have the amount of first read targets that he had, again, the same amount as Courtland Sutton and Troy Franklin combined. They were designing plays where Pat Bryant was the first read. That is great to see. 29.5 receiving yards. That's a fairly low projection for someone on a good team, clearly ascending, and was a wide receiver talent we really liked this offseason. Similar story to a lesser degree, but similar story for Jack Bech. He hasn't really fully broken out yet the way that Pat Bryant kind of has over the last couple of weeks, but he did finally jump to a 56% snap share. Last week, he was tied for the lead among wide receivers on the team in first read percentage. Had the same number of first read targets as some of the wide receivers on the team, despite running fewer routes. they're just ramping them up rest of the season. And it kind of makes sense, right? You're 2-10. Do you really need to be peppering Tyler Lockett with targets? Like, what is that doing for the future of this team? You got to figure out what is Jack Bech's role moving forward. It's probably as their future slot wide receiver. So put him into the slot and let him run routes and develop this season. He was your 58th overall pick. At this point, it was a bad pick. It's not saying that in the future it won't turn into being a good pick, but you got to figure out how good he is. I know the matchup is brutal. I don't want to understate that they are playing the Denver Broncos, but you don't need to do a whole lot to get to 22 receiving yards. When you know the team's going to be dropping back at a very high rate, they're going to fall behind fairly quickly. They're not going to be able to run the ball anyways. They're going to have to throw the football. And if he jumps up to a 60, 65, 70% snap share, I mean, it's not that difficult to get to 22 receiving yards. And they also last week finally schemed him usage. Throughout the season, it's been like he's allowed to be on the field sometimes, but you're not getting anything schemed. Last week, they were finally like, okay, go run some routes, and occasionally you're going to be the first read on these routes. Nice to see. Hopefully it ramps up. Hopefully it increases this next week. 22, not that difficult to get to. All right, some solo picks now. I like Trey McBride, higher than 76.5 receiving yards, but I wouldn't take this one until we confirm Marv's status. I think people are assuming right now Marv is not going to play. That is my assumption, but I kind of want that confirmed. If Marv does play this weekend, I don't know that I'd love 76.5 receiving yards, but I don't think the line's really going to change, or the projection's really going to change if we see Marvin Harrison Jr. out, because again, I think that's what people are kind of expecting. We'll probably know this on Friday. He hasn't practiced yet. If he doesn't practice Friday, when this video goes up, he is not going to play this weekend. Assuming that Marv is out, McBride is set up to drop a nuke this weekend. Arizona already has the highest pass rate over expectation of any team across the entire season, and that counts games with Kyler Murray. When they switched to Jacoby Brissett, their pass rate over expectation went way up. So they are by far the most pass-heavy team in the NFL, and they're 8-point home underdogs. Like, again, home teams throw the ball at a higher rate, and 8-point underdogs typically are in trailing game scripts. You're also playing a Rams team that just got embarrassed by the Panthers. Like, not that the Panthers are one of the worst teams in the NFL, but that was a game they absolutely should have won. It was a huge game for them. They're going to come out firing this weekend. You better believe that the Rams are scoring at will this weekend. They are really going to want to be putting up a ton of points, not going to be playing it safe at all. And if that happens, we're probably going to get a game script where Jacoby Brissett is dropping back 40, 45, 47, maybe 50 times. And if that occurs, we're not going to need that high of a target share from Trey McBride, who they always make sure they get their targets to. If Marv is out, I'm pretty sure McBride is going to have 100 receiving yards. I also like Kyle Monangai, higher than 45.5 rushing yards. Monangai has been fantastic this season. He now takes on a Packers defense allowing the third lowest pass rate over expectation. Teams are choosing to run the ball at a very high rate against the Packers. It's also going to be below 20 degrees in Green Bay this weekend. The Bears have also shifted to being more of a run-first team when they can. Obviously, there's some times where they fall behind, where the matchup doesn't really dictate running the ball, and they'll be willing to pass because they have good receivers and a good scheme. So they're willing to throw the ball. But this is not a spot where they're going to do that. You also look at the Green Bay side, and not only going into last week did teams run the ball at a high rate, they just lost their star defensive tackle last week. And so the matchup and the weather both say run the football. And your team, how they've been playing, says run the football. I mean, Ben Johnson just came out and was like, yeah, we're winning in spite of our passing game. They're not pumped about that, but they understand that running the ball with Swift and Monangai is how they're winning games. It is not with Caleb Williams dropping back and being amazing. Maybe next season they can kind of develop into that, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen this year. And so if they know that, it's a huge game for the playoffs. Do you really think that Ben Johnson's going to go out there and be like, Caleb, drop back 45 times? Absolutely not. If he had his way, Caleb Williams would drop back 25 times this weekend, and they would run the ball 40 times. That is what Ben Johnson wants to do. And so I don't think it's going to be that difficult for Monangai to hit 45.5 rushing yards. So good luck to everyone this weekend. I know a lot of you are in must-win matchups to make it into the fantasy playoffs. My season-long matchups don't matter at this point. Everything's pretty much locked in, but I am sweating my two biggest best ball teams. I'm rooting heavily for Jonathan Taylor and Trey McBride this weekend. I'm rooting very much against the Steelers' passing attack. Feeling good about that, right? That should be a good thing, but I'm sure that Aaron Rodgers will come out of nowhere and have the game of his life and crush my dreams this weekend. So again, good luck to everyone. I'll see you all on Monday for the Week 15 waiver wire video.